Bridget, 2 minutes ahead of time. Told you you'd have extra time.
All right, well, before I jump right into the budget, I believe you have some extra pages in your folder from my department. Being that the communications department is fairly new within the past 5 years, I wanted to update the board on some of the major accomplishments and some of the objectives I have for this department going forward. I won't run through every single bullet point, but I did want to touch on some of these highlights. So to start that off, both the creation and implementation of the organization-wide style guide as well as the strategic communications plan. I will focus on the strategic communications plan for a second. That has really laid the groundwork for what this department will be.
Is there any way we can get it on the screen for people at home or?
For the
Director of Communication, bullet points?
No, not the budget,
I don't have
the bullet.
PDF, but I will upload it to,
okay, alright.
I'll upload it to the website.
Very cool, very cool.
So the strategic communications plan, as you saw toward the end of 2024, really builds the foundation for what this department will be. Right now we are looking forward to beginning to implement all the facets of that to really optimize how we're reaching our audiences. So I am looking forward to that. Another major accomplishment we've seen is the Reimagine Town e-newsletter, which was launched a year ago tomorrow. We have sustained an open rate of 72.67%, which is above the industry standard of 41% for government communicators. And we have a sustained click rate of 11.42%, which is above the standard government email communications rate of 2%. I have worked on developing a post and pre-project worksheet, which helps in the creation of communications plan for major projects and initiatives. We have, just to pull another thing out of our accomplishments, we've had major events including the highway ribbon cutting, last week's revaluation kickoff meeting, and we are growing our earned media coverage substantially. Where I'm hoping to go in the next year and beyond is expansion of our digital reach through growth of photographic and video captures. I think we can all agree that we're reaching a more digital landscape, and we need to be keeping ahead of what these trends are so we can make sure to reach as many people as possible. But with that being said, we also can't be leaving any of our audiences behind. So there will be another component of that, which is continuing to expand our other opportunities for community outreach. Where we've seen that most successfully recently is visiting 55 plus living communities, and also in our relationship with the school district growing. We certainly are going to need to be all hands on deck and foot on the gas pedal with our major projects like the comprehensive plan and the 2027 townwide revaluation. Another major objective I'd like to see is updates to the website that will make it more user-friendly and accessible for all of our users. So jumping into the budget and where all of that connects is that you will see that relative to the size of the communications department budget, there is quite an increase over last year. And I'd love to talk you through some of those things. So starting off with administrative salaries, you'll see that jumped from being budgeted at $40,000 last year to $62,000 this year. So I'd love to talk you through the history of this position. The position was initially added in the 2023 cable budget at $45,000. Last year, it was approved in the communications budget for 2025. At that time, we were waiting on the civil service test results, which were released in April of this year. And then from there, we went on with the hiring process. Note on that is that the money for that position was placeholder funding. In talking to the personnel department, in looking through the union pay scale, we have to compare the position to jobs of similar scopes, duty, and necessary qualifications to other positions. So it is paid equitably to other similar roles. And that's why you'll observe the change from what was budgeted last year to what the actuals were this year. We do have someone coming on board. His start date is this coming Monday, August 4th. And we're very excited to dive into some of these opportunities as, especially as we're seeing some of these major projects like the revaluation, like the comprehensive plan, and like major capital projects like we're seeing down at the sewer. Part-time personnel, you'll see that there's a slight decrease from last year. The reason for that is to pair up with what actuals are so far this year, but also because that full-time communications assistant will also be playing a substantial role in taking on shifts for producing board meeting videos and audio. For several other lines, we are relatively stable. Seminars and conferences, you'll see, has gone up from last year. This year I attended the National Association of Government Communicators conference, which I found to be extremely helpful, meeting with several other director level government communicators from throughout the country. I was able to bring back several talking points and ideas that we've already started implementing. Office supplies is slightly up based on another person, but also based on seeing that we do have the capacity to take on creating some of our own in-house materials. So a couple of examples of that are the highway department ribbon cutting, the invitation to that event, and the postcards that have been advertising the revaluation events, like the one we had on July 22nd, and also the one advertising what is coming up on September 25th for the exemption workshop. We are creating those in-house to save on printing costs, but you will see a slightly higher office supply line. And then the last line there you'll see is website design and maintenance. That was budgeted for 2025 based on what was budgeted in the cable department for 2024. And we just right-sized that based on what actuals were from this year. And I am happy to take any questions.
Well, I don't have a question, but I like the outline of the accomplishments. Because there's more going on in communications than folks realize. And I do like the idea of expanding reach through photos and videos, because there's so many great things that happen in the town and people don't know, or if they see an event and they don't know what it is, if there's some visuals and some clips and things that engage the residents of Webster, it'll drive more participation to some of the many, many great events that are offered through town. You know, Parks and Recreations, the big summer celebration that just grows every single year. That's a fabulous event. And there's more that's going to happen, and I know very important with the revaluation project. And the first community event was a real success. We have a couple of years and a lot more educating to do, so those things are going to be very important.
Absolutely, thank you, Councilwoman Wright.
So we hire an outside entity to do our website design and maintenance. I thought we were doing that in-house.
We do the maintenance of it in-house, but to host the site, that's what the cost, the contractual cost is. We are
Because it says maintenance here.
yeah, so that is like super back-end maintenance. So we meet with like a client success manager several times a year, and that's part of our redesign costs. And this is just paying for that redesign that we had.
So, is this an annual cost, I take it, for website design and maintenance, or is it just when
So-
they do something different, we pay them?
So it is and correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, but it is a 5-year cost that's split among 5 years.
I think that's correct.
So our redesign was done in 2023, and that redesign covers 5 years.
Okay. And your administrative salaries for 2025 was 40,000, then it jumped to 62,000 for 2026, and that was where you were saying,
Yes, so what was put in there last year was a placeholder that was determined between the supervisor's office, myself, and personnel. That test was administered back in November of 2024. Test results did not come back until April, and in that time, we were working on, with New York State, determining where this job compares as far as duties, scope, and qualifications to other similar jobs, and that's where the pay scale was determined from there based on civil service.
so that's a full-time position, I take it?
That's a full-time position, yes, it's a communications assistant position.
And it's a civil service,
Correct.
and we approve for the civil service position.
So what the process was that the test was administered in November of last year. We received the list in April of this year. Brayton canvassed the list of reachable exam takers. We received that back, only received interest from 2 people based on civil service law, being that neither of those applicants stood out as the correct fit for us. We canvassed, or we put out the position provisionally. We received back several applications, held interviews, and ultimately chose our candidate who starts on Monday.
What's the civil service test, the title for that test?
Communications assistant.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Just one question, anyway, I wanted to thank you, I know you do a wonderful job and everything, but to have we already passed the thing, but this is maybe redundant. Like having a freelance or a contractor to do per diem or something like that, because I know that we cut down the the part-time personnel, which is great. But we add on this position, which is gonna be, pensions and everything else and stuff like that, so it's gonna add on more for the expense.
Certainly, and this is not a new position. It was in the communications budget last year, certainly at a lower amount, and it was also budgeted and approved in 2023 in the cable budget.
Because I know like all the town, they only have like one, person to do the position, and I know this is a lot. It comes from a marketing perspective. I get it, I understand, and you have to promote our town, which I appreciate that very much.
Actually, several towns do have a communications assistant. The town of Arundequoit does, the town of Parrington does, the town of Penfield has similar roles that perform similar functions, and I believe the town of Greece also does. So towns of the scale of our size do have 2 or more folks.
Are they all full-time positions, the assistants?
Yes.
We're running into some benchmarking problems right now, because I should have had the foresight to do this on this presentation, that you really gotta look at the cable department, that was here, or what was called the cable department, for 2021, 22, all the way across. And, cause you got communications here on the actuals of 0, 0, whatever, cause we didn't have communications.
Yeah, it was $107,000 in 2024 communications, or the cable access was.
Yeah, and I would imagine we'd have to go back in time to look at the previous ones, because there was actual in communications of 77,000. Was there actual in cable, as you're saying? Cable.
Communications actual in 2024 was 77,000.
Right.
Cable access in 2024 was 107,000.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. So we had, or whatever. How many positions were in cable and then authorized to be increased in cable for full-time and part-time? Then as you had this kind of cable and communications that was approved in the 24 budget, which was done in mid-23, and then all of a sudden at the end of 23, when you were hired, and we started staffing communications and we had a cable department, within a week or two of that, our cable director had an opportunity to leave, and we decided not to replace with that full-time equivalent cable director, and started to migrate everything over to communications. And I don't know if this tells the story, because you can sit here and say, geez, it looks like we're increasing our full-time equivalents and all that. I don't know really if we are, compared to what was lobbied and approved back in 22 and 23 by the cable director, for what essentially is, and another benchmarking problem is that Penfield has a cable person who is doing communications, this and that, so it's kind of a semantic issue, like, how do you compare towns our size, for what are they investing in communications, in defined communications? Well, this person handles the website. Well, I think that's communications. Well, we have that in IT, which we found out from a couple people at the March 27th symposium. So if that's what they want to do, that's what they want to do. I don't think the website is IT. I think that should be communications, but it's not my town. So we've had challenges on comparing apples to oranges, or apples to apples on our communications department. I do know this, and Luke, hey, I hope he's watching. He starts on Monday, right? We're pretty high on this guy. Comes very highly recommended. Has done this for the county. We think we have just stockpiled talent on that. But I think that you were surprised, as was Brayton, that once you got the test results back and you saw all this, and when you started to really look at what that position pays, we had as a placeholder for the 25 budget, which we were doing in mid-24, we were off on that. There's no other way to explain that. Now the good news is that in 25 we had it as 40 grand. Well, we haven't spent a dime in 25, so I guess look at the bright side of that. Luke is starting with 5 months left, so we'll stay under that budget. If you want to say from a financial standpoint, the bad news is we're up in next year's by 22,000 over what we budgeted. I would like to think that based on how these projects and what we want to do, and man, we're like, Luke can't get here fast enough. This is a $51 million organization that's got 400 employees and 45,000 customers. And I got to tell you something, I don't think it's possible to appropriately handle communications and maximize that with one person. That's just my opinion. And how you then do it with outsourced firms and this and that, yeah, that's a whole other kettle of fish, as far as I'm concerned on how to do that. So, but anyway, and I do want to just tie into something as we tie up today's meeting. Certainly, if anybody has more questions or comments for Bridget, I want them to have them. But something you said, Ginny, about, well, you know, it's all, I forget what you said, but it's already approved and whatever. I wanna make sure I go back to my preamble, nothing's approved.
We approved the 40,000, like you said.
We did
last
approve the
month.
40,000
Yeah,
for
placeholder,
25,
yeah,
yes.
but we did not
Right.
for the 62,000.
Yeah, the 5,000 on the part-time personnel, I don't wanna, let's put it this way, on November 1st, 2024, that young lady over there, all of a sudden I had to go and say, hey, remember that job we hired you for, 3 days ago? Hate to tell you this, but you now have to do these 3 closeouts of the cable department. You have to close out that building that's 2,100 square feet over there on Picture Parkway. That was not under your job duties when we hired you. You have to figure out this system within the boardroom as far as microphones and cameras and YouTube and all that. And the third one is Cable 1303. Those things were all set up when we got a communications director to be in the cable department. They were not to be in the communications department. So I could make an argument that really for almost a year, almost more than a year, you were performing cable department closeout things, and I appreciate that. But it's now time for us to really ramp up this communication department and do what I know it can do. And I've already seen some of the results, and I think that one that you described, the monthly newsletter, we can sit there and say, I don't like the content, I like the old one that was weekly, it was better, it had more things. That's subjective. That's subjective. And I'll open my mind to any subjective opinions, because that's what it is. But what is irrefutably objective is that the people that were getting that weekly newsletter prior to 25, prior to 20, in 24 and beyond, the people that were opening that and hitting the links were very minor. Very minor. It was almost as though a tree was falling in the woods and nobody was there to hear it. Her keeping track of the 72% open rate, because we do it through Constant Contact, so we can see who opens it. And then we can see who hits the links, because the way it's formatted, it's just got a brief description, but if you're like, I'm interested in that story, then you hit the link. And as she said earlier, I've been thrilled that we have been able to maintain those type of high numbers that blow away by double what governments usually get to open their emails and hit their links. We didn't have that kind of granularity back when we sent out weekly newsletters. That's just a fact. There's no subjectivity to that. That's an objective fact. And now, what she didn't tell you is that I had said at the beginning of this year, oh great, you're achieving these results with 1,200 email addresses from our citizens. Now we know there's 15,000 houses. 1,200 houses are represented. How do we, by the end of the year, get that up to 2,000 houses? And so we came up with a plan where Kim Doyle, myself, and Bridget, we would come through with 100 new email addresses a month, and we would drop them in. You're about to drop another 100 into August, right? Which will get you to around 1,600 email addresses, where we started the year at around 1,100 or 1,200. And what we assumed was going to happen was that because these people didn't sign up for the newsletter, these are ones that, based on our interaction with them over the last week or month, and we got their email address, put them in there, let's see what happens. There's a part at the bottom that says unsubscribe. We assumed those new ones over the last couple months would be less likely to open it or hit the links, and it's been the exact opposite. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, not to refute what you're saying, open rates among those new ads, because we're able to segment those results, is slightly lower, but overall we're maintaining that high open rate. I will also add that we've reached quite a bit of organic sign up through landing pages and through our website sign up page. So in the past month, I think we've seen a growth, about nearly 100 people have signed up on their own.
And I will say this, and all right, and we're, you can tell I love communications. the town board will get my weekly update tomorrow. I've already got the comp plan done on it. As far as, I think everybody knows that back on June 12th, Colliers in our planning department had the steering committee second meeting, I think here in this room, correct? And at that time, they reported that the Webster2040.com website, where we were getting surveys and also interactive people putting a dot and giving a narrative of what they wanted, on that website, we had 219 surveys filled out on June 12th, and we had 173 people that put a dot with a narrative. And the plan was that we were going to have that open from April 22nd, which is when we had our first public engagement meeting over at the rec center, to June 15th. But I think everybody said that's not enough. That's not enough public engagement to really gauge what this town wants. So we sat down with Colliers. Bridget was very much involved in this, and we said, look, we want you to keep that open past June 15th. We want it to July 31st, July 30th. Now, if that 45-day extension is going to cause a problem with your schedule of this year and a half, updating the comprehensive plan, let's get that out right now, because I would rather us throw everything but the kitchen sink at trying to get people to fill out these surveys. Now, at that time, Colliers basically looked and said, well, this is what we do, this is what we do. Bridget said, you know what, this is what we can do. We can do this, 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 this from our communication department. It's closed out yesterday. Yesterday was the last day. We had 219 surveys on June 12th. We ended with 837 surveys. We quadrupled it in the last 45 days. And nothing against Colliers, but that was the effort of the town communication. And the Chris Bylows and the library and everybody that jumped in. On June 12th, we had 173 dots on the map on Webster 2040. 173 with a narrative written in what they want. We ended yesterday with 683. We quadrupled the surveys and quadrupled the narratives in 45 days. Colliers even said, we thought you were kind of crazy, Tom, that you wanted to keep this open for 45 days. In their response, they said, this is unbelievable. We have never had this kind of participation leading in to a comprehensive plan update. Now, they're going to have their next steering committee update meeting sometime in late August or early September, and Jennifer, you're on that steering committee. They will have a lot more to show you than they did on June 12th, because that's a lot more people. And I want to say this again, this is no disrespect to Colliers. There was the scope of what they do. They didn't do anything outside of that scope, which they shouldn't. Our communications department and other departments here jumped in, and that's how we got those results. I'm going to tell you, communications is uber important. Lips flap. How do we reconcile lips flapping about it being important with the actions and investment we take in communications going into the future? So, I will get off my soapbox. Any other questions or comments for Bridget?
No.